everyone. So, I've got so much stuff to do. You're going to be seeing so many more of these tincture videos throughout the season because it's tincture season. Can't really make fresh plant matter tinctures very often in the wintertime, so there won't be many videos then. So, get ready for a lot of these throughout the summer. It's definitely the season of the rose. You know, and these are wild dogwood roses. You might have watched a video where I showed them to you in the wild, and if you haven't, you can definitely go check that out. But maybe you already know dogwood rose or any other wild rose or any rose, and you want to know how to make a wild rose petal elixir. But it doesn't have to be wild. You know, you can use your garden grown roses. Just be sure that you haven't been, just be sure that there's been no pesticides used on them, and then try to avoid feeding them chemical fertilizers because that stuff does get pulled up into the plant. So what I'm about to do here is across the board with any rose, and it's so simple. It really is. So I painstakingly gathered all of these wild rose blooms. This represents hours. Because a wild rose bloom only has about 4 to 5 petals, not the whole beautiful, you know, bloom you see on like a standard garden rose. So it takes, so this represents like many different bushes where I still have to gather ethically, so I can't gather this all off of one bush. So this is easy though. All you're going to do is put your rose petals in your jar, and try to pick a jar that you'll, for the most part, fill up. And I'll definitely end up making 2 quarts of this, which is great, because I will have one ready in the next, month or so, and then I will have one ready in winter. But you want to leave a little bit of room. So, I don't like to pack it down, but I'm going to shake it down a bit, just a bit. And if you've got some of the hips in here or leaves, that's totally fine. It's all safe to use. And so the next thing I'm going to do is take my vodka, 100 proof vodka. You can also use honey liquor, not liqueur, liquor. There's a difference between liquor and liqueur, and that's 80 proof. Don't go above 100 proof. And now, normally you see me chop up plants a little bit so there's more surface space, but these petals are so delicate, they will easily be absorbed from. There's no reason to chop them up. And they're individual petals, so there's already, a ton of surface space. And I'm going to fill it about halfway up with vodka. I'm going to give it a good swirl to kind of get it to settle into the vodka there. And then I'm going to take my honey. We use local raw honey from up on our mountain. You can use normal honey too. Well, I mean, all honey's normal, but you can use like store-bought honey. Raw's best, but if you can't get a hold of raw, don't beat yourself up over it. And you're gonna fill the jar up the rest of the way. Just all the way up. And now you want to do the vodka first. Don't do it the other way around. Don't be like, well, I'll pour the honey first. Because if you do that, honey creates essentially like a waterproof barrier that the vodka won't get through. It will eventually with time, but it takes forever. So all I did was put my wild rose petals into a jar, filled it about halfway up with 100 proof vodka, and covered the rest with honey. Now I'm going to put a jar on it, and I'm going to shake the hell out of it to try to get that barrier broke between the honey on the top and the vodka on the bottom. You could use a stirrer too, but I'm telling you, shake it instead of stirring it because of all that honey. Honey and flour go everywhere. That's what my grandma used to say. She was talking about like powdered flour, like baking flour, like flour. But these are flowers, so that always comes to my mind. Honey and flour goes everywhere. So look, and now it's all blended up. And then over the next few days, as the alcohol content breaks down the honey, it'll be easier to mix. It'll just turn into one uniform medium, I guess you would call it. So you're like, why do I want to make this? Why? Well, other than the fact that it will taste amazing, she's a really cool nervine. Like, you know, if you're feeling a little nervous, she can kind of calm you down a bit. She's pretty cool for women's breast health. She's pretty cool as an antiviral, keeping colds and flus at bay. She's all around just an amazing, safe, simple medicine to have on hand. I feel like, and you don't hear me talk about this kind of stuff very often because I'm pretty against spirituality for sale, but I feel like she's really good for people with broken hearts. Like Rose is through and through heart medicine, you know, and she's been like that for thousands of years. Roses have always kind of symbolized like either like grieving or loving and just like heart medicine. So she's pretty cool. Now, I like to call this like the first season of the rose, because rose kind of gives well like into the beginning of spring all the way into like past the first frost. And so make sure that when you're gathering these blooms that you try to just take the petals and not the hip that's developing, because you can go back later after your first frost and gather rose hips, which make an amazing medicine. So you are smart enough to do this. You are smart enough to put rose petals in a jar, dump some 100-proof vodka over, and put some honey on top of it. For real. Now, as I talked about before, we use 100-proof vodka, nothing stronger, because we want it to be an already even mix of 50-50. So 100-proof means 50% alcohol, 50% water. That means we're also getting not only the water soluble and alcohol soluble properties, but the water soluble properties. And that's why if you've ever tried any of my tinctures, you're like, well, people are like, well, those are really like the smoothest tincture I've ever tasted. It's really well rounded. It's worked the best for me. And that's not even me like hyping myself up. Anybody who uses fresh plant matter with 100-proof vodka will have the same results, because she just helps make it more balanced. You're getting all of these constitutes. So yeah, definitely only do this with fresh rose hips, or rose petals, or rose hips, or any plant you're going to use. Anyhow, so the next thing I'm going to do is write on a label, and you can make your own labels, or you can use masking tape. I have to use these complicated ones, so I have batch numbers and stuff. So I'm going to mark tincture, I'm going to mark honey, and I'm going to put the date on there. And I'm going to mark that it's wild crafted, and I'm going to write what's in it. I'm going to write the product name on it. You know what you would call it, but you know, it's rose elixir. And I'm going to write where I got it from. It's always just good to know where you gathered a plant from. And then I'm going to put it on here. Now usually, I tell you when we're making a tincture to put it in a cool, dark place. But when I use that much honey in something, I like to use a dark, warm place. Not hot, but dark and warm. So like I will sit this on top of a seed heating mat. But if you don't have that available, you could sit it on top of your refrigerator. That usually gets warm up there. Just put like a towel over it or something so it's dark. You could put it even on top of like a water heater, as long as you put something over it that's not flammable. You know, don't burn your house down. Water heaters can get pretty hot. And if you don't have that option, a cool dark place will work fine. Just let it go longer than 6 to 8 weeks. So if I am setting this somewhere dark and warm, it's ready in 6 to 8 weeks. If I am setting this somewhere cool and dark, I'm going to let it go at least 14 weeks. And that's because only about half of that was vodka, and when we put that honey in there, we knocked the proof down, meaning we watered down the alcohol content, and that's fine. You don't have to worry about math with the lower content. It's still completely safe to take this a drop at a time. It's just that it takes a little longer for that alcohol to do its job of extracting the medicinal properties. And honey. Honey's a really cool extractor of water-based properties. She actually like pulls out medicinal values. And so she needs time to do her work too. So you're smart enough to do this, folks. You are smart enough to put rose petals in a jar. I almost said hips again. Put honey over her, put vodka over her. You're smart enough to do this. And now is the season. I find that the sooner you get these rose petals in the season before it gets crazy hot, even though they tend to like bloom throughout the summer, I find her to be more potent in the early days of spring. So get out there and start making medicine while the sun shines. If you like my videos, subscribe, turn on notifications, because notification lets you know when I upload new videos, and like and comment. That way I know you're here with me and I'm not just talking into the void. And lastly, come check out my bio here to find me on Instagram if you're not here from there. I always think, I'm like, that makes sense, right? If you're not here from there. Yeah, it makes sense. And you can find my website. You can find out more about me, how I practice herbalism, what my beliefs are. You can come on over to Instagram and hear me talk about like healing from trauma. It's not just all herbs, because there's so much more to herbalism than just working with plants. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time, okay? Bye.